Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you. Welcome back. We're going to be continuing on with letter 3 in the Christ letters, Jesus Christ, the truth. And we left off with Jesus teaching some people that followed him and his disciples up into the hills when they were trying to get some respite and some rest. And we're about to go into more of the teaching that we stopped in the last video. And I do apologize that I can't always finish these in their entirety before I stop, because we were at the almost 30-minute mark with my last video. So I kind of had to pause and then come back. So we'll go ahead and continue on with the teaching. And he was talking about how to enter the kingdom of heaven, what the kingdom of heaven was, what it looked like, what it felt like, how to get there. So that's what we're going to talk about right now. And then we're going to go into the famous story of the fishes and the loaves of bread that he made multiply for his hungry crowd of listeners. How shall we enter the kingdom? I have already told you, you enter the kingdom of heaven when you repent of all that you are in your heart and mind. When you take your evil to the Father and ask forgiveness and pray for the strength to be cleansed of your evil thoughts, words, and deeds, and you finally get rid of them, then you may be sure that you are about to find the kingdom of heaven. When you have accomplished this, you will find that your attitudes towards others are changing, for the Father will be doing its love work within you. You will be free of the chains and thongs of evil desires and deeds, which previously bound you and made you a captive in the world. More than this, you will find that the Father does satisfy your every need. A woman shouted, "I have a need at this very moment, Master. I am hungry." The people laughed, but then several voices joined in, saying, "We have been with you many hours. You made us walk and walk before you would consent to teach us. We have shown you we are the good sheep. Will you not help us and satisfy our hunger?" I realized that they spoke the truth and felt compassion for them. They had followed after me not just for healing, but because they longed to know the truth as it had been given me by the Father. I had told them that the Father satisfies their needs. This would be an opportunity to show them the power of faith and the power that is God. I would prove to them that nothing is impossible when you truly believe as I believed and perceived. I called my disciples to me and told them to find out if there were any present who had food. They found a young boy with loaves and fishes and brought them to me. I withdrew some way from the crowd and quietly contemplated the loaves and fishes, knowing that they were but God mind power, the substance of all matter, made visible. I knew that God mind power was limitless and powerfully active within my consciousness. I knew that the nature of the Father is fulfillment of need. As I blessed the food, I felt the power flow fully through my mind, body, and hands, and I knew the people's hunger would be satisfied. I did not know how this would be, I just knew it would. I then took the baskets of food and told the disciples to distribute it, feeling absolutely certain that everyone would have as much food as they needed. As it was broken and passed around, so did it multiply itself, until all the throng were fed and satisfied. There were several baskets of leftovers. In this way, I demonstrated that matter, whatever is visible within the universe, is mind consciousness made visible through the vibration of the motes, which science terms particles. Changes in the vibrations of motes, hence changes in matter, take place as a result of a powerfully directed, disciplined, focused movement/imagery in mind consciousness energy, when one acts purely out of a love consciousness to accomplish good for others. The only limits to the Father love work within the world are the limits which man's mind sets upon that work, and that is all in capital letters. Such changes in matter can only take place when the consciousness of man is perfectly in harmony and united with Father universal consciousness. Although there was amazement amongst the people and my disciples, when the people were fed in this way, not one of them understood how such a thing was accomplished. They could only conclude this was the greatest miracle they had ever seen. It also confirmed their belief that I was the Son of God. Another day, I was sitting under a tree outside Bethesda, surrounded by people who had brought their sick to be healed. As always, they marveled at the return of life and health to these people and wondered how such miracles could be done. Again, I tried to make them understand the power of faith. In the Gospels, it has been stated, I said, that if a man had faith the size of a mustard seed, he would be able to move mountains. This statement is a misinterpretation of what I truly said, and it reveals how little my disciples and gospelers understood my teachings when we were on earth. If a person were to have faith the size of a mustard seed, what does that mean? How can you measure faith in such a way? Faith is faith. It is a power of total conviction in the mind, possessing the mind, and cannot be restricted in size. Faith, arising out of your need to believe in something, because such a belief will serve your purposes in some way, can be powerful and strong, but never could be estimated in size. Belief is even stronger. Belief is the offspring of hearsay and logic. Because you have heard something and have been convinced that what you have heard or read is true, you develop a deep belief in what you have heard. You believe it to be true. You believe in a total, complete way, which defies contradiction. I was constantly telling the people, believe you will receive, and you will receive. However, I knew at the time that it would be well nigh impossible for the people to ever have the faith which would cause miracles to happen, since no matter how much I might explain truth to them, they would still never have the intense knowing given me in the desert. But now, as I relate in small measure the story of my sojourn on earth in Palestine, it is with the intention that you, my reader, will begin to perceive and understand the knowledge I was given during my enlightenment. My intention is to give you knowledge. Hearsay is when you are told something, but you cannot really prove it is true. Knowledge is when you are told something or read something, and because what you have now heard or read complies logically and realistically with all related items of knowledge already in your mind, and you can understand and believe it in a realistic, logical way, the new information becomes knowledge. You know that what you now know is true. You have a sense of conviction. Up to this time, some of you have had faith in Jesus Christ, but you have been like precocious children. Your faith has been partially blind and accepting, yet interwoven with much doubt. Therefore, whatever you needed to be done for you, you depended on Jesus for the work to be accomplished. Whereas in fact, much of what you believe you have derived directly from Jesus has been your own faith in Jesus, made visible in the form of things asked for. Whilst this childlike faith is very important to your well-being, those of you who are capable of moving onward on the spiritual path to perfection must now reach a deeper level of true knowledge of the relation between mind and matter. Without this foundation, people will continue to flounder in religious myths and will be locked into the misery of the human condition. When I was on earth, I spoke truth to the people, but it was continually misinterpreted. What I really said regarding faith was this: you see this great big tree? It is grown out of the tiniest seed imaginable. See the vast trunk and branches and foliage. All that enormous growth has come out of a small seed. How did such a thing come about? From whence came all the wood in the tree and the foliage which adorns it? It is not this as much a miracle. Is not this as much a miracle as are all the miracles I perform for you day after day? Is not the growth of this tree as much the work of the Father as the healing which takes place in sick people? I ask, what is a seed? Can you tell me? No, you cannot. but I will tell you. It is a tiny entity of consciousness knowledge. It is the consciousness knowledge of what will become. It is a fragment of consciousness drawn from divine creative consciousness. It is a fragment of mind power drawn from Father Mind power, which, when planted in the earth and watered by rain, will begin to clothe itself with the visible matter, of which it possesses knowledge deep within itself. This knowledge is true, it is firm, it is strong and undeviating. This self-knowledge embodied in the seed is a conviction in consciousness. All of life forms arise out of this one-pointed self-knowledge, a conviction in consciousness that lives and grows upon the face of the earth. Where there is no conviction of consciousness or knowledge of identity, there is no growth. The consciousness within soil and rocks remains consciousness in a dormant form. Therefore, if you could believe in what you asked for as powerfully as does a mustard seed know its own identity, you would be able to do anything you wanted to do. If you could carry within your mind a seed, the perfected plan of your most heartfelt goals, and know beyond all doubt that it can grow and come into perfect fruition, you would see this wonderful seed take on a life of its own, which would presently manifest in your life. And you could surely move the mountains in your lives, those mountains which stand across your path and prevent you from achieving all that you would like. Mountains which, in times of recklessness and evil thinking, have been created by yourselves. If you only understood creation and existence, you would be able to live lives of total freedom, limitless achievement, and transcendent joy. Seek to understand, and you will find that little by little, understanding will come to you. Knock on the door of the universe, giving access to God, the universal Father consciousness, and eventually you will find the door swinging open, and you will have entrance to the secrets of the world. Only believe and you will receive. I also reminded them at all times. Only those with pure minds and hearts will accomplish these mighty things. The wicked may flourish for a while, as have kings and marauding armies and others hoarding iniquity in their minds. They have been permitted to do their work for a while, since certain good would also arise out of the evil. But eventually they fail, and their names are reviled by the rest of the world. Therefore, as many of you as would succeed, examine your motivations. Desires born solely of selfish longing for wealth or comfort eventually end in disappointment, sickness, and death. And I say to you who read these words, let no one dare to deny the truth I speak until they too have walked the path of self-renunciation which I walked on earth, and reached the same union with the Father and the heights of incontrovertible knowledge and understanding as I possessed. When you have achieved all this, you will no longer have any desire to deny the truth I speak to you, but will be unable to restrain yourselves from joining me in teaching your fellow men. Until that time, hold your peace and let no man know your ignorance. How often throughout the world people gladly embrace my teachings as being highly moralistic and the most perfectly formulated guidelines to good behavior and daily living. However, they add quickly that the stories of miracles should be discounted, since such aberrations of natural laws of the universe are not possible. This type of thought is building barriers to the future progress in spiritual scientific development, of which the human mind is capable. In fact, I did not come to earth to introduce a new religion or higher moral code than that given by Moses in the Ten Commandments. My purpose was to bring a new perception of God as creator and understanding of existence itself. Out of that knowledge would come a new way of life. The correct attitude towards my mission on earth in this third millennium is to acknowledge that the miracles I performed are beyond the capabilities of the average human being at this time. However, such miracles were examples of what can be achieved in the future when people's minds are fully imbued with the true knowledge of existence and are also, through faith, meditation, and prayer, fully attuned to and imbued with universal life, love, consciousness. Was it really true I walked on water when my disciples boarded a boat to cross the lake? If you have read the biblical account of this incident, you will realize that the disciples had left me behind. I yearned for an opportunity to withdraw from all human contact, retire to the hills, and once more enter into a profound meditation to allow my consciousness to merge into the universal dimension of God consciousness. Whilst in this spiritual state transcending human consciousness, all awareness of physicality disappeared, and ecstatically I was lifted into the universal stream of life, and knew that the universal life was all. Life was the reality of my beingness, and all else were but temporary changing appearances of universal life made visible. I knew, I felt, I was life itself. And as I slipped beyond earthly consciousness into the universal life consciousness, the laws governing my physical being were transcended and no longer applied to the flesh and blood of my human body. I longed to move about in this new transcendent state and found myself floating out of my cave. I could see my disciples on the lake and knew they were in distress. Effortlessly, I floated down over the hills towards the shore, and as I began to regain contact with my normal human concerns, in this case my disciples, I found myself coming to rest on the waters. However, I was still in that condition where I realized fully that I myself was life individualized, and therefore my body was suffused with life power, which continued to lighten and transform the atomic structure of my physical state. You must understand that hearing and thinking in the human consciousness state and the ascension into the transcendent realization of universal life, when the personal consciousness is now withdrawn from the bodily condition and wholly merged in universal Father consciousness, belong to two entirely different dimensions of being. The human consciousness can receive inspiration from the universal Father consciousness, but the inspiration received mingles with the human condition and is frequently misinterpreted according to the store of knowledge already controlling the brain, and therefore the mental processes themselves. Unfortunately, the inspiration you receive is contaminated and distorted by your present strongly maintained beliefs, whereas the transcendent perceptual and realization state rises out of, emerges from the physical condition. The brain is no longer in control. It no longer has any influence on the transcendent perceptual state, which is truth itself. It is no longer controlled or affected by human belief. It is in a state of what really is, back of visible manifestation and existence, instead of in the human dimension of what it believes existence to be. It is in the transcendent state of consciousness that miracles are but normal working of universal law. Before I continue with this account of my life on earth, I want to stress again that everything in the universe is a particular and individualized state of consciousness made visible. I have had to descend from my present state of consciousness of universal love in order to experience again my life on earth, which remains indelibly imprinted within the consciousness energy of the world itself, dating back to the time of its moment of creation. You must understand that when I left my body in Palestine, I left everything pertaining to that life behind me. I had fulfilled my mission. Therefore, when I died on the cross, I was set free. I was lifted into glorious light to partake of that light, to be the light, and rejoice in the light, which is universal love, life, beauty, harmony, joy, and rapture. Moving between different levels of consciousness is no easy or pleasant assignment, It is only because my mission on earth was not completed when I died in Palestine that I now return to help you prepare to enter a new age, a new phase of individualized existence on earth. You may gain some understanding of what I mean by the discomfort of this enterprise when you remember the times you have recalled some deep sadness in your life and you find yourself reacting with almost the same degree of tension and emotional stress as you did when the sadness actually took place. Reflecting on past suffering and sorrow will make you want to cry. You will feel a return of the original depression and anguish as you relive that time in your imagination. You may want to withdraw from people because your consciousness has now descended from your former state of happy, peaceful equilibrium to experience yet again the lowered consciousness vibrations and consciousness forms you created at the initial time of your suffering. Changing moods indicates a change in your consciousness energies. A lift in your consciousness vibrations gives you a physical, emotional, and mental lift, making you feel happy. A drop in your consciousness energies will depress the functioning of your entire system, and you will feel the onset of depression, or at the very least, a drop from the former buoyancy you were enjoying. I am describing for you a fact of existence. Your entire universe manifests the differing frequencies of vibrations of consciousness energy particles. As these frequencies move up or down from one level to another, so do the visible and physical structures manifest differing levels of energy, and there is a change of mental patterns and emotions and appearance. To descend from my state of consciousness to re-enter the conditions of my time on earth is prompted only by my love for mankind. For 2,000 years, Christians have been reliving the trauma of my crucifixion. Some people have even experienced the stigma, which is nothing more than a hysterical and morbidly emotional response to what they believe I endured. People have worked themselves up into an emotional pitch akin to frenzy whilst imagining the anguish of my suffering before my death. Their emotional gratitude for what I endured sends them into a state of physical distress. This is being written on your Good Friday, and I have come specifically to talk to you about my crucifixion and tell you that you must abandon all the drama associated with the remembrance of this day. I died, and that was for me a wondrous relief. It is time that people wake up from their long, long dream and come to understand existence as it really is, and the truth concerning my crucifixion, which has been hidden till this time. On Good Fridays, year after year, down the centuries, you have created a contaminated, traumatic consciousness state of being throughout the world, as far removed from the spiritual dimension of universal creative consciousness as hell is removed from heaven. Now that I have chosen to relive my life on earth in this persona of Jesus through the mind of the one who is receiving my words, in order to help the world move on to a new phase of spiritual mental development, I ask those who can receive my words to give up this practice of remembering my death and exercising physical self-denial during your Lenten fast to commemorate my 40 days in the desert. As you must realize from this narrative, my time in the desert was one of great joy and blessedness of spirit. And then I will share with you that for some reason, there are a line full of the number 8. Specifically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I'm not really sure what that means. Many events of great spiritual significance took place just prior to my death, which are excellent examples of the great cosmic laws in action within your dimension of existence. I am now giving you a brief account of those important events, since it is my purpose to enlighten your minds wholly, to give you knowledge beyond any knowledge yet received by any other person in your universe. Okay, so not knowing that, this was what was coming next. We're going to go into Christ's crucifixion, and it's a longer section, and we're already at the 25-minute mark. So I'm going to start with that same sentence that I just read in my next video, and we're going to read about the crucifixion. And depending on how long that is, we may go into another topic. But I really want that to stand on its own. So we're going to stop right there, and we will begin that in our next video. Thank you all so very much for joining me. I love you all so much. I thank you for showing up for yourself and for showing up for all of mankind. And just know, this is the type of literature or information that really does need to be revisited time and time again. As I said in one of my previous videos, this is my third time reading it, and I am reading it aloud to you, but I am still reading it. And every time I read it or listen to it, because I have listened to it on audiobook, I understand something different, something new. I realize something different or new, and I feel myself grow in that consciousness. I feel those changes shift in me in the most wonderful way. So this is not a one and done type of experience. If you are feeling pulled to listen to this book or to read it, this is something that you should return to time and time again. And if you do decide in the future to read this book to yourself by actually purchasing it or listening to it, I recommend doing it in small doses, a few pages at a time at most, pausing whenever you need to, taking a moment to center yourself before, taking a moment to center yourself afterwards. So with that being said, you do whatever feels right for you. If that's not your thing, that's okay. If you're just here to hear it intellectually, whatever you're here for is fine. And wherever you are is where you're supposed to be. But that's just a little bit of advice from somebody who has read this several times. And it really does get me emotional. It really is something that I do feel passionately about, because I feel with every fiber of my being that what I am hearing actually makes sense, and it is the truth, at least for me. And it took me listening to it to learn ever more every time. I knew right away that what I was hearing was the truth, but the understanding that comes down the road from listening or reading this book more than once is a gift without a price tag. It really is. So take your time, ponder, think on things, take it as you need to. And whether this reaches one person or 1,000 or even none, it's out there and somebody will find it when they're meant to. That's all that matters to me. So I love you all very much. Thank you as always for joining me. As always, take care of yourself, take care of those around you, and I will see you again. We will talk about the crucifixion from Jesus's point of view. What better one is there? Take care until I see you again. Bye-bye.